You've probably heard it your whole life in Canada: pay off the mortgage, own your home outright, and ride into retirement debt-free. Sounds like security. Right. But here's the shocker. Once Canadians hit 50, some of the wealthiest among us, people who could buy homes in Vancouver, Toronto, or Calgary in cash tomorrow, are deliberately choosing to rent, not because they can't afford ownership. They absolutely can. I'm talking about net worths in the millions, portfolios that could swallow any down payment whole. Yet these people are walking away from the so-called Canadian dream of homeownership. Why? Because after 50, the rules of the financial game shift. What matters most isn't the pride of ownership, it's freedom, control. In one word, almost nobody considers enough liquidity. And if you're over 50 thinking about downsizing, relocating, or even cashing out of your family home, this one insight could change how you view the next stage of your financial life. Reason number one, liquidity is king. When you're 30, tying up $600,000 in a house feels smart. You've got decades for appreciation to work in your favor. But when you're 55 or 60, that same $600,000 frozen inside drywall could cost you millions in opportunity. Let me illustrate with Canadian numbers. Imagine you're in Toronto. Considering whether to buy a 1.2 million condo, you've saved $300,000 for the down payment. Most people would lock it in and celebrate ownership. But a savvy millionaire sees the math differently. Instead of buying, you rent a comparable condo for, say, $4,000 per month. You take that $300,000 down payment and place it into a diversified portfolio. Let's assume 6% annual return, which is a reasonable long-term Canadian benchmark for a balanced ETF. That generates $18,000 annually, or $1,500 a month. In income, now, layer in RRIF, withdrawals, or TFSA growth. And suddenly your rental payments don't look like throwing money away. They look like buying freedom with someone else handling the repairs. Meanwhile, if you had locked the $300,000 into the condo, it's trapped, no monthly income, no liquidity, and if you need to move in Canada, you'll face 4-5% realtor fees, months of listings, and in Ontario or BC, potentially higher closing costs. I've seen this firsthand with clients. A gentleman in his late 50s from Ottawa sold his house, chose to rent, and kept his capital working. When his mother in Halifax needed care, he could pivot immediately. No listing delays, no house poor stress. He simply redirected funds, moved provinces, and maintained his portfolio intact. That's the power of liquidity. Here's the hidden truth. After 50, liquidity isn't just a financial advantage. It's a life advantage when you need to relocate for health, family, or lifestyle reasons. Liquid capital gives you choices that a house can't. Real estate may look like stability, but it often anchors you down at the very moment you need flexibility the most. Reason number two, the flexibility premium. And this brings us to the second advantage that millionaires understand, a benefit I like to call the flexibility premium. After 50, life in Canada rarely follows a straight line. Health concerns can surface unexpectedly. Adult children may relocate across provinces. Or you might simply decide that long winters in Ontario aren't for you anymore. At this stage, the ability to adapt quickly isn't a luxury, it's survival. Consider the story of a couple from Calgary who thought they had found their forever home. They paid off a $900,000 bungalow, enjoyed the mountain views, and believed they were set for life. But then their daughter moved to Victoria and had her first child. Suddenly, holidays weren't enough. They wanted to be present for school concerts, birthdays, and daily support. Selling their home meant realtor commissions of roughly 4% to 5%, staging costs, and months of stress. Had they been renting? The transition could have been as simple as giving 60 days notice and packing their things. Flexibility is often underrated until you need it. Renting in Canada provides a built-in option to adapt. Want to try living in Kelowna for the summer? Interested in spending winters in Florida while keeping ties in Toronto? Renting lets you test these choices without the heavy commitment of ownership. That kind of agility is priceless when your priorities shift. Let's talk about costs. In British Columbia, selling a 1 million home can trigger $40,000, $50,000 in realtor and closing fees before you even think about moving trucks or lawyers. Add in the time it takes, often 3 to 6 months, to close a sale, and the so-called stability of homeownership starts to feel more like a chain around your ankle. For retirees who want to explore different lifestyles or relocate closer to healthcare services, that delay can be devastating. Here's another overlooked reality. Hobbies and passions evolve as you age. Some people discover travel. Others want to be near arts communities or maybe closer to grandchildren in Montreal or Ottawa. Homeownership turns those dreams into logistical headaches. Renting turns them into possibilities. Millionaires understand this on a deep level. They're not protecting bricks and mortar, they're protecting options. Options to relocate, options to adapt, options to say yes to new experiences and no to the weight of selling, fixing, or negotiating. And when you add it up, the ability to move when life demands, it isn't just a lifestyle perk, it's a financial shield. That's the flexibility premium. And for Canadians entering their 50s, it can be worth more than equity itself. Reason. Number 3, the true cost explosion. But even if you never plan to move, another reality quietly erodes the dream of homeownership after 50, the true cost explosion. When you're in your 30s, you can patch a leaking roof yourself, delay renovations, or handle minor plumbing jobs with a Saturday trip to Canadian Tire. At 60, that's no longer the case. Every repair becomes a phone call to a contractor, and contractors don't work cheap. Take property taxes. In Ontario, average property tax rates hover around 2.7%, 1% on a 1 million home. That's $710,000 every single year, money that never builds equity and never comes back. In British Columbia, insurance premiums have been climbing sharply due to wildfire and flood risk. A retired couple in Kelowna recently saw their home insurance jump from $1,800 to over $3,200 in just 5 years. And that's before counting maintenance. Maintenance costs are the silent drain most homeowners underestimate. Industry averages suggest 1% to 3% of a home's value per year on an $800,000 property. That's $8,000 to $24,000 annually. Sure, some years may be lighter, but when the furnace dies or the roof needs replacement, the bill can hit $20,000, $30,000 in one shot. For retirees living on a fixed income, that unpredictability is crushing. Here's a real example. A couple in Mississauga owned a $900,000 detached home over 10 years. Their out-of-pocket costs looked like this: property taxes, about $8,500 per year, achieved $85,000. Insurance, $2,500 per year, achieved $25,000. Maintenance, repairs average $6,000 per year, due $60,000 or major items roof. HVAC, $28,000 over the decade. That's nearly $200,000 in invisible costs before even including the opportunity cost of the $200,000 equity locked in the house. If that money had been invested at a modest 6% return, it would have grown to about $268,000. Add the two together, and the true cost of ownership was close to $500,000 over 10 years. Meanwhile, comparable rentals in their area were available for around $3,500 per month, or $42,000 annually. Renting didn't just remove the surprise bills, it gave them predictability, something retirees value above all else. Millionaires know this math instinctively. They understand that property taxes don't pause when you retire. Insurance rarely goes down, and contractors never get cheaper. When you tally everything, the cost of owning a home after 50 isn't just money, it's stress, time, and risk. Renting flips that script: fixed costs, no midnight repair calls, and no capital tied up in shingles and foundations. And when predictability becomes more valuable than potential appreciation, renting quietly wins. Reason. Number 4, estate planning simplified, and if the rising costs weren't enough. There's a stage of life where home ownership creates a different kind of burden, estate planning. When you pass away, leaving a house to your children isn't as simple as handing over keys. In Canada, it often means probate, appraisals, realtor involvement, legal filings, and potentially months, sometimes years before assets are distributed, instead of receiving support. Your loved ones inherit a project. Consider this in Ontario. Probate or estate administration tax is roughly 1.5% of the estate's value on a $1 million home. That's $15,000 paid to the government before a single dollar goes to your heirs. In British Columbia, it's about 1.4%, still significant. On top of that, selling the property triggers realtor commissions of 4% to 5%, plus legal fees. Suddenly, that $1 million legacy could shrink by 60,000 and 70,000 before your family sees a cent. And then comes the emotional cost. Who gets to keep the house? Who wants to sell? How do siblings divide responsibilities for maintenance, taxes, or tenants? I've seen Canadian families fractured over inherited real estate arguments that drag on not because of greed, but because houses aren't liquid. You can't divide a roof 3 ways. Now compare that with leaving a portfolio of liquid investments. A 1 million diversified portfolio can be split into equal shares almost instantly. It can be managed professionally, generates income right away, and requires no repairs, inspections, or tense family meetings. From the heir's perspective, the choice is obvious. They'd rather inherit cash flow than a leaking roof. Yes, the principal residence exemption PRE in Canada means your primary home is shielded from capital gains tax. That's valuable, but PRE doesn't erase probate fees, selling costs, or family conflict. It also doesn't protect heirs from market timing. What if the house must be sold during a downturn? I recall one client from Toronto, worth over $15 million, who sold his last piece of residential property at 60. His reasoning was simple. I want to leave my kids money, not chores. Every dollar went into liquid, income-generating assets. When he passed, his children didn't have to clean, list, or negotiate. They simply inherited wealth they could use right away. Millionaires know estate planning isn't about maximizing what you own. It's about minimizing complications for those you love. Renting keeps your wealth fluid, divisible, and simple to pass on. And in the end, simplicity may be the highest form of wealth. Reason number 5, the opportunity cost and beyond simplicity in estate planning. There's one final reason that makes millionaires pause before buying another home after 50, the raw mathematics of opportunity cost. Picture this. You're 52 and considering purchasing a $900,000 condo in Vancouver. You've saved $250,000 for the down payment. On paper, it feels like the responsible Canadian thing to do. Put roots down, own something solid, let it appreciate. But let's run the numbers. If you buy, that $250,000 becomes locked inside the property. It generates no income. Meanwhile, your monthly ownership costs mortgage, condo fees, property tax, insurance, and repairs can easily reach $4,500 or more. Yes, the condo may appreciate at 3% annually, but after fees and carrying costs, the net growth is much thinner than it looks on the listing brochure. Now, consider the alternative. You rent the same condo for $300 per month and invest your $250,000 down payment in a diversified portfolio inside your TFSA and RRSP. Let's assume a 6.5% average annual return reasonable for a balanced Canadian portfolio over time. That $250,000 grows to about $530,000 by age 65. That's an additional $280,000 in wealth created without touching the principal. And because it's in a TFSA, the growth could be completely tax-free. Even if rent climbs by 3% annually, the math still leans in your favor. You're paying less month to month than the all-in cost of ownership, while your capital compounds in the market. In other words, your money is working for you, not sitting idle in drywall. Here's another angle Canadians near retirement must consider: sequence of returns risk. If a major market downturn hits in your first years of RIF withdrawals, having liquidity outside your home can be a lifesaver. You can draw from cash or bonds instead of selling investments at a loss. But if your wealth is trapped in real estate, you may be forced to sell a property in a weak housing market or worse. Watch your retirement plan collapse under stress. Renting keeps your portfolio liquid and diversified, giving you a buffer against these very real risks. Millionaires understand that after 50, the goal isn't just to preserve capital, it's to keep capital productive. Real estate may offer emotional comfort, but liquid investments offer flexibility, income, and compounding growth. The math doesn't lie. Every dollar locked in a home is a dollar that isn't working at full strength. That's why. For those who think like investors, renting isn't throwing money away. It's buying the freedom to let your capital grow where it can perform best. Reason, G6, objections, handling. Of course, at this point, you might be thinking, but what about equity? What about the tax advantages, and isn't owning a home more stable than renting? These are fair objections, and they're exactly the ones most Canadians over 50 wrestle with. Let's address them head on. Objection number 1, building equity. The first objection is equity. For decades, you've been told that paying off a home is the surest way to build wealth. And yes, equity is real. But after 50, the timeline for compounding changes. If you buy a $1 million home in your 50s with a 25-year amortization, most of your early payments are going to interest, property tax, and insurance, not principal. By the time you've meaningfully built equity, you may already be deep into retirement. And remember, equity in your home is illiquid. You can't sell a bathroom to cover a medical bill. To access it, you'd need a HELOC or reverse mortgage, both of which come with costs, restrictions, and risks. Renting, on the other hand, allows you to direct capital into liquid assets that generate income today, not decades from now. Objection number 2, tax benefits. The second objection is tax savings. In the United States, homeowners often deduct mortgage interest from taxable income. But here's the key difference: Canada doesn't allow that deduction for primary residences. The big tax advantage we do have is the principal residence exemption PRE, which eliminates capital gains when you sell your primary home. And yes, that's powerful. But here's what many don't consider: PRE only helps you when you sell. And it doesn't erase the ongoing costs of property tax, insurance, and maintenance. A Toronto homeowner who gains $300,000 tax-free from selling their house may have spent $150,000 or more over a decade on those ongoing costs. The exemption doesn't cancel out the hidden drain along the way. Meanwhile, investing through a TFSA allows your gains to be both tax-free and liquid throughout your life, not just at the moment of sale. Objection number 3, stability, finally. There's the stability argument. Home ownership feels stable. Nobody can raise your rent or ask you to move. But here's the irony: after 50, ownership often creates more instability, not less. Roof replacements, furnace breakdowns, rising property taxes, or insurance spikes, none of these are predictable. And all of them land squarely on your shoulders. Compare that with renting. In most Canadian provinces, landlords must provide at least 60 to 90 days notice for major changes, and rent control exists in Ontario, Manitoba, and British Columbia for many units. A renter knows their costs in advance, and if the property no longer suits, they can move with far less friction than selling. True stability in retirement doesn't come from anchoring yourself to one address. It comes from knowing your financial picture is predictable and your capital is accessible. So yes, equity exists, PRE is valuable, and homeownership can feel stable. But when you examine the numbers and the lived realities of Canadians in their 50s and 60s, the picture shifts. Liquidity, flexibility, cost predictability, and simplified estate planning often outweigh the traditional benefits of ownership. That's why millionaires don't reject real estate because they have to, they choose to, because they understand the trade-offs. And once you see through those common objections, the path forward becomes much clearer. Reason. Number 7, power recap. And when you strip away the myths and the common objections, the lesson becomes much simpler. Millionaires rent after 50 not because they dislike homes, but because they follow 3 clear rules that anyone can apply. Rule number 1, avoid fast depreciation. Every dollar you lock into a property after 50 works slower than you think. Property taxes rise, insurance climbs, maintenance becomes unpredictable, and the timeline for appreciation is too short to make up for it. Wealthy Canadians know that assets which drain more than they earn are liabilities in disguise. By renting, they sidestep the hidden depreciation of roofs, HVAC systems, and realtor fees and keep their capital working elsewhere. Rule number 2, eliminate repeated hidden costs. Owning a home means paying for things you can't always control. $10,000 property taxes in Ontario, $3,000, $4,000 insurance premiums in BC, $20,000 roof replacements in Alberta. These costs arrive whether you're ready or not. Renters transfer that risk to the landlord and instead pay a predictable monthly bill. For retirees on fixed incomes, that predictability is worth more than the illusion of owning a fluctuating asset. Rule number 3, prioritize cash flow and flexibility. The wealthy understand that control matters more than possession. Liquidity gives them options to move closer to grandchildren in Halifax, to spend winters in Florida, or to reallocate funds when markets shift. Flexibility ensures they aren't trapped by a property that no longer fits their health or lifestyle. And most importantly, steady cash flow, whether from dividends, RIF withdrawals, or TFSA growth, creates real stability. A home might appreciate slowly, but liquid assets can compound and pay income year after year. When you put these 3 rules together, the picture changes. Homeownership after 50 isn't always the safe bet it's made out to be. Renting doesn't mean you're losing, it means you're choosing liquidity over bricks, choosing predictability over uncertainty, choosing freedom over obligation. And that's the quiet formula the wealthy follow. Avoid depreciation, avoid hidden costs, and prioritize cash flow and flexibility. Simple rules, but powerful enough to turn the so-called Canadian dream on its head. So, where does this leave you? If you're over 50 in Canada, the real question isn't, should I own? It's what gives me the most freedom, stability, and control over my money. For many millionaires, the answer is clear. Renting keeps their capital liquid, their lifestyle flexible, and their estate planning simple. Here's a small challenge you can try this week. Take 7 days and do 3 things. Cut 1 subscription you no longer use, delay 1 upgrade you were planning, and review 1 hidden cost in your budget, whether that's property tax, insurance, or maintenance. You'll be surprised how quickly little leaks add up and how freeing it feels to redirect those dollars into assets that actually work for you. Remember, none of this is about abandoning the dream of home ownership if you truly love where you live. It's about running the numbers honestly and deciding whether your capital is best locked in bricks or working for you in markets, accounts, and portfolios that pay you back. This is educational only, not personal advice. But if you take one thing away, let it be this: after 50, wealth isn't about what you own. It's about what you control.